not just news media. As you said before, there are also like links between Hollywood and the CIA and the Department of Defense. You know, as you mentioned before, the Department of Defense has like an entertainment liaison office where Hollywood film producers can submit scripts for approval. And in exchange for that approval, they get access to, you know, like if they want to portray the military in any way, or they want to use U.S. military equipment, if their script is approved, they get access to that equipment, but also subsidies in the form of, you know, like, you know, they don't have to rent out that equipment. They don't have to like produce that equipment through CGI, which, you know, a lot of times these movies are kind of on a shoestring budget, and, you know, like $1 million to like produce this equipment through CGI, that could like basically make or break your film. But yeah, could you talk a little bit more about these links between Hollywood and the Department of Defense?
Yeah, so the Department of Defense has literally edited the scripts of nearly 1,000 films and more than 1,000 television shows, documentaries, Hollywood productions, and it's quite direct. I mean, as you mentioned, the Pentagon offers a lot of low cost, at least relatively to the overall cost of what it means to produce something in CGI, maybe getting that kind of technology to reproduce a realistic landscape of any, you know, sometimes just parts of the world, or sometimes it's trying to actually, like with the Avengers movies, you see they're trying to make replicas of what military technology would look like in the future, or with some kind of superhuman being, you know, like that takes money. And so the Pentagon offers low cost, right? They just charge, I think, what it would cost to maintain the equipment and the locations that you use. And that ends up being a lot cheaper than doing it on your own. Of course, producing like an F-16 costs a million, you know, tens of millions of dollars, but you can rent one out. You can rent a bunch of them out for a fraction of that cost, for maybe 5% of that cost. And so movies, you know, these film producers, they submit their scripts to the Pentagon for approval in order to gain this support. And the Pentagon, unlike China, because China has been leveled with these egregious accusations from, I don't even know, Michael Fenton, I think his name is. He's like this hack, right, who's been on Voice of America and everywhere. He talks about China's influence over Hollywood. And then you really read the analysis, and China only focuses on issues, first of all, access to its own market. Then it asks,
yeah, can you talk a little bit about this? Because from what I understand, China only allows a certain number of foreign films into its market every year. And then the ones that are rejected, I get the impression that Americans say they're banned when they're just not, they only allow a certain number in the first place. So yeah, could you talk a little bit about that and like misconceptions of that?
Well, first, of course, there's only a certain number that are allowed. And I mean, China's film market is heavily regulated, right? And it's heavily regulated for good reason, because the entire reform and opening up process in China is about, yes, let's build relationships and economic trade arrangements with all countries, but let's not let our market be completely subsumed with, let's say, the Hollywood industry. So it disallows that by placing that cap. I don't know what the number is exactly, but it is a cap, and it's a pretty...
I want to say it's 20,
very strict. And they're not popular. Yeah. I mean, there's also a practical part of this, is that Hollywood movies are never popular, right? The Farewell, for example, they're not popular in China. I mean, The Farewell, like even movies that people think are even somewhat sympathetic that would have some kind of connection to China are not popular, right? The American and Western voice still is not something that people are just grabbing and wanting to pay lots and lots of money to see. So there's some practical parts of this. But when it even comes to the arrangement between film producers or major film production corporations, media corporations in China, and how China is portrayed in the media, it really is only, China really only does focus on those issues. They're not focusing on the entire script and saying, ooh, X, Y, and Z needs to come out. It's, well, you're talking about Taiwan, and the United States fund, you know, gives billions of dollars in military weaponry to a local government that actually is considered in the One China policy to be a part of you know, the internationally recognized definition of what China is as a nation. So we are going to have a say in how China will be portrayed there. The Pentagon, on the other hand, literally looks through each part of the script and makes edits based on core values of what the Pentagon sees as core values, and how not only how the Pentagon is portrayed, but how the United States is portrayed, and how the movie is produced overall. So it's a completely different way of managing this kind of relationship. And it also is a different power dynamic and power relationship, because China is opening access to its own market for Hollywood, you know, these corporations to come in and gain advantages from. And all they're asking, and all China's government is asking, is for a say in how it is portrayed in the media, while the United States, for movies that the U.S., the Pentagon sees as problematic to its war efforts, it will literally edit out completely, or withhold funding from and withhold resources from, in order to make sure that the message changes. And that is, I think, another level of egregious violation of, you know, the creative process or free speech or what have you, than anything that China is doing. China is defending its sovereignty and how its nation is portrayed, and has every right to restrict access otherwise. While the United States is doing this to anyone who's producing movies within its own borders based on the war aims that are extremely destructive to the people and the planet. So I just find it hilarious that China is portrayed as some kind of barrier to Hollywood. Really, the only thing China is a barrier to is these warmongering messages that Hollywood hopes to produce at China's expense.
No, you raise a really good point about the process itself, because like when a film production team submits a script to the Department of Defense, it submits it through the entertainment liaison office, and then that office sends it out to like whatever like military office needs to look at it. And they basically have full editorial control over the script. They look over the entire script, and they can request changes and like edits to any part of that script whatsoever, like whether or not there's like military involvement in that scene or not. And then, you know, they will like, you know, conditional upon approval, you have to make these edits, and then you like make the film. And then like before the film is released, it has to be screened in front of these like, you know, a handful of Department of Defense officials. And if they see anything in that film that they don't like or want changed, they can request that you do that, and you have to do it. You know, I read a little bit about Top Gun, like when preparing for this show, and Top Gun underwent like major revisions at the request of the Department of Defense. I think there was this one part where someone in the film made a joke about the U.S. losing the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And the Department of Defense told them to take it out, and they had to take it out. And, Top Gun, that definitely wasn't the first film that was submitted for DoD approval. But it's like commercial success was what like sort of solidified this link between the DoD and Hollywood. And after Top Gun, it just became the standard to submit scripts for DoD approval.
We got 1,000 knots closer, Mav. It's coming right at us.
Okay, buddy. What's on your mind? Oh, shit. There's two of them.
Woo! Big 28! No one's been this close before.
What the hell are they doing here? What's the position?
250 miles out, sir.
250 miles? Get them out of here.
You've got Mig 1. I'm going after Mig 2.
I lost him in the sun. Shit, what's he doing? You got him, Merlin? He's coming around. He's coming around on our tail. God damn it, this bogey's all over me.
What's the range now?
200 miles, sir.
They break 150 miles, launch the Alert 5 aircraft.
Yes, sir.
Airspeed 300. Go get him, Mav.
I'm going for missile lock. See if we can scare this guy out of here. Come on, lock up, baby. Lock up, baby. Lock up. I got him locked. Bingo.
We got him, Mav. He's bugging out and going home.
Mustang, this is Maverick. Mig 2 is headed home.
People are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, well, you don't have to submit a script. Like, you can like make a film about the military, but it doesn't need Pentagon approval. But it's like, I mean, yeah, you can like produce like the helicopters and stuff through CGI, but it doesn't look nearly as realistic and it's much more expensive. So if you can like get that equipment, you can get that equipment or that stock footage for like relatively cheap, of course you're going to go that route and you're going to make these like sort of suggested changes.
Of course. And Hollywood operates under the confines of capitalism and global capitalism. And so the whole drive of global capitalism is to cut costs. And we know Hollywood is a parasitic monopoly at this point. It is under the control of a very tiny few corporations that are doing everything they can to compete while at the same time consolidate and make as much profits as they can. So you're going to, I mean, the Pentagon has a budget of more than $750 billion, half of which goes to military contractors, which are producing all of these weapons. The majority of them are not being used at all in warfare. The ones that are just, of course, just committing enormous war crimes around the world, but the majority of them are not. And the majority of them are aging and whatnot. So, of course, there's this huge drive to utilize that equipment as well. So it really is a mutually, you could call it beneficial relationship, but it's been called mutually exploitative because it is about how to get the best deal. And I think a really good example of this that was in the article by Alex Lowe in the South China Morning Post that you mentioned was a television show in Homeland where he goes over the FOIA documents. I think there were more than 100 pages of these documents showing step by step how the DoD, how the liaison office goes through this process with a potential partner, a producer. And so during the production of Homeland in 2019, right, there was a request, literally quoted, a request received for U.S. Army support for the final season of Homeland, but the Army has declined to support based on major problems noted in scripts. And then later in March, there was progress made where the Army Entertainment Office is in talks with the producers of Homeland. The initial script was declined due to a storyline that was not an accurate portrayal of soldiers. The showrunner responded with significant edits to the problematic areas, and the Army has agreed to a conference call to explore the ways ahead. And then on April 4th, which, not too long afterward, they got what they wanted. The showrunner responded with significant edits to the problematic areas, and the Army has agreed to provide support as requested. I mean, that's just a very specific example of how this process works. And really, because the United States is a hegemon, there really aren't equivalent examples in the world. And so our attention should be on this relationship and how problematic it is, how much of a conflict of interest it is, and how much it does spur and forward and reinforce the most destructive policy that exists on the planet today, which is U.S. foreign policy.